Billionaire Bruce Wayne embarks on a journey to confront his demons, save Gotham City, and become the Batman. In Batman Begins, Christopher Nolan's film, the first in what we now know as the Dark Knight Trilogy. This movie, it really blew my mind when it first came out. I saw it opening day in the summer of 2005. In June, it first came out, and I ended up seeing it several times. It was a hugely impressive film at the time, and it remains so to this day. It really holds up. This was something that, of course, gave a fresh start to the Batman film series. Like, obviously, it wasn't connected in any way to the previous four. This was something completely new. It had been something I was following because, I mean, like the last Batman film, Batman and Robin, that was '97. That was many years ago. Before this came out, at one time there was Darren Aronofsky, who was attached to kind of do like a Batman Year One kind of thing. Then that kind of shifted around, and eventually the creative process went to Christopher Nolan, which, I mean, at that point, I think a lot of people knew it would be in good hands, because already at that point he was establishing himself as one of the great and one of the most new and exciting directors, with, like, Memento was a very impressive film, and Insomnia as well. So, I mean, he pretty much an ideal director to take on Batman and kind of get the atmosphere right. And this was an opportunity that hadn't been kind of sought out in the Batman movies previous, because, I mean, beginning with the Tim Burton film in '89, I mean, it kind of quickly established the character so that we never really got a proper origin film. So this, and being a fresh start, this being a new kind of reboot, I guess, is what we call it now. This was a chance to retell everything and do it in Christopher Nolan's way, and his way ended up being quite successful and resulting in a beloved trilogy, really. And a lot of people responded really positively to the film. Really got a lot of things right about Batman. And, like, the thing about the movie that really struck me was that, it didn't feel like it was just another comic book movie. Like, with the genre still kind of gaining sort of a popularity, like, obviously we had the X-Men films were becoming very popular, and the Spider-Man films, but still there was just, I don't know, this kind of stigma about them, where they're still kind of kids movies. This one felt, I mean, for lack of a better way of putting it, it felt like a real movie, which was really cool to see. It had a legitimacy to it. It had a reverence for the character, and this movie, with all sincerity, it does ask the question: what would make this man decide to go out at night and dress up as a bat and fight crime? And it doesn't really take any shortcuts or make any assumptions. It really kind of fights hard for that sentiment and in answering that question, and it does it just expertly, brilliantly. I think this is one of the best comic book films ever created, and it certainly stands up. Watching it 15 years later, it's a sad thing, unfortunately, that the Nolan films are in the rear view. These were very exciting and special times for comic book fans, for Batman fans, and just in general for fans of film. I mean, this is just in general a great film that explores Bruce Wayne's journey, and it, of course, it establishes a lot of what we already know, and adds on more to it, and in kind of, I don't know, sort of what we may have expected from Chris Nolan at the time, if only because there was Memento previously. kind of the first, I'd say first third of the film, it kind of jumps back and forth in time. It's not exactly a linear story when we first begin. Like when we first meet Bruce Wayne, played brilliantly by Christian Bale in the film. He's waking up in this Chinese prison, and he's awakened from bad dreams, remembering in his childhood about falling into this well and into a cave where he meets all these bats, and it traumatizes him. And basically, what this first third of the film does, it follows Bruce Wayne in meeting this mysterious character, this Ducard, played by Liam Neeson, kind of recruiting him into the League of Shadows, which is super secret force that fights against crime and injustice and all that stuff. And it's in so many ways it's basically him reflecting and him telling the story of how he got there. And needless to say, we see a little bit of his childhood and his father, and kind of the influence he had on him, and how he imparts kind of morals to him about the city and about how lucky they are, and how important it is to help others who are less fortunate. And of course, Thomas Wayne, he does it in his own way, and working at the hospital, and building a transit system that connects the whole city, that's affordable and all that kind of stuff. They go out. In this case, in this iteration, they go to an opera, and when they leave, they go into the alley. I guess, I mean, we don't really see this big dramatic sign that says Crime Alley, but we can assume it's Crime Alley. The parents are killed in a mugging gone wrong, and Bruce Wayne is left an orphan. And the crime that has been eating away at the city has found its way into his life, and it has affected him. And he is left not just traumatized, but confused and angry at how that all had to happen. And he's confused about vengeance, and the mugger who killed his parents, not the Joker in this case. In this case, it is Joe Chill, just any old criminal, basically. And him kind of wanting vengeance for that, but not being able to attain it, and ultimately trying to understand criminals and their lives. And that's what kind of brings him outside of his comfort zone, and into the mountains, training with the League of Shadows. But then after that, it kind of goes into a much larger plot, where he's finally putting things together, using his resources as Bruce Wayne, the billionaire, all the toys that he has at his disposal, and at his disposal, in research and developments, scientific applied sciences, applied sciences, stuff like that. And finally becoming the Batman, and it's a long road to get there, and kind of every step of the way feels legitimate, feels viable. I mean, if only for the fact that I don't know, maybe there's just not quite a better way to put it. A lot of people say, yeah, this is a realistic kind of movie. It's gritty, and it feels real. I mean, it's still kind of this absurd thing about a man dressing up as a bat, but because it takes those steps, because it is so sincere in wanting to explore this character and his life and his very personal and true devotion to wanting to do something about crime, I think it really makes that transformation from the young kid in the alley over his parents' bodies to this superhero stalking the night convincing. It really does. And I think a large part of why they're able to kind of get away with it is that this isn't just, any old superhero, right? I mean, with any kind of other superhero movie, there's kind of the aspect of superpowers, right? So uh, those types of characters, those types of movies, they demand something a little bit, I don't know, larger than life, right? But since Batman's really just this normal flesh and blood man who happens to have these resources at his disposal, they're able to kind of play up that aspect of it as much as possible. And the way they kind of explore his feelings about Gotham City, it strikes true, and we understand it. I mean, the way Bruce Wayne he feels about Gotham City. I mean, that's, you can take a look at that and kind of apply it to how we all feel individually about the world itself, right? I mean, you can look at things as a real, in a real kind of negative way, where there's corruption, there's crime, there's injustice, and sometimes maybe it doesn't feel like this world is worth saving. But I mean, Bruce Wayne, he has that hope, he has the belief that there is good in the world and it is worth saving, and he wants to be an example of that good. What's the line? I can devote myself to an ideal. As a man, I'm just flesh and blood. I can be defeated, I can fade away and die, but as an ideal, I can become something much more. So that's kind of what he's fighting for in this movie, and I think we can truly respond to that as an audience, and we can go along with him on this journey, and it's quite the journey. And the movie, it's just so tightly knit together. Like, there, pretty much everything has a payoff. Like, in exploring, in the first third of the movie, it shows him becoming Batman, and then the larger plot that kind of comes together of him becoming Batman, and trying to stop this whole evil plot from the League of Shadows, and kind of putting everything together. How basically the evil scheme here, it's a pretty good one, actually. It's they've infiltrated Gotham. They've kind of went through all the channels that they could, and bribing the right people, taking advantage of the corruption, and they're bringing in drugs and putting it into the city's water supply. And this drug, it's a weaponized hallucinogen, and it can only be effective through inhalation. So they're putting in the water supply, but they've also stolen a special, prototype weapon from Wayne Enterprises that was meant for desert warfare, that basically evaporates water. And the plan is to infect the water supply, set this machine off, get the hallucinogen all over the city, have everyone kind of stark raving mad, and just going crazy with this fear-inducing hallucinogen, and tearing each other apart because they feel that Gotham is beyond saving, and they want to see it destroyed, basically, and to start anew. So it's Batman trying to stop that, and everything kind of connects together and pays off in this plot from like the littlest things. Like, one of the themes of this movie is fear. So I mean, that's of course a very good evil plot to have, and of course Jonathan Crane, the Scarecrow, is one of the featured villains in this movie. But like, we've kind of gone past the silly villain of the week kind of thing. So it's a much different interpretation, and he's played by Cillian Murphy, a really great role. Though it is a smaller one, and though he is, by everyone's kind of admission in the movie, his own included, kind of a pawn in this larger scheme. developed by Ra's al Ghul, who is the leader of the League of Shadows, who initially is played by Ken Watanabe, but spoilers, we learn that it's actually Ducard. It's actually Liam Neeson. So we have the aspect of fear, and we have kind of the earlier scene that introduces the rare flower that can extract this. The chemical can be extracted from this flower, and how he has to get beyond fear and confront his own fear, and even his father's dying words to him are, Bruce, don't be afraid, and choosing to look like a bat, it's because he's become afraid of bats. So I mean, it all kind of comes together. It's a really great way, and even in the characters it introduces, I mean, characters are introduced throughout the origin story, whether it be Sergeant Gordon, I should say, Sergeant Gordon, played by Gary Oldman, who's wonderful playing the role, and just kind of like an early scene where he's tending to Bruce and making sure he's all right after his parents' murder and all that, and him kind of keeping an eye on him throughout the years, seeing that he is a good cop, one of the few cops who's not on the take, who's not corrupt, and his relationship with Rachel Dawes, played by Katie Holmes, and how she's grown up, share a similar goal as him in trying to stop the crime in Gotham, but she's doing it through the regular kind of course of legality. So she's working with the DA and trying her best and all that, and we meet her early on, and if she of course has a significant role later on. Even like the character, the Tom Wilkinson character, Carmine Falcone, who's kind of the mob boss of the whole Gotham criminal empire. He's a part early on in the origin as well. Bruce kind of confronts him, and he does get some kind of sage advice from this mob boss, who's like basically pointing at a gun at him, saying there's nothing he can do. It's like, you just don't understand this world, and that's what kind of inspires him to go off and truly kind of try to understand the criminal mind. So it all contributes on his journey along to being Batman. And of course throughout the whole thing there's Alfred, wonderful performance. Michael Caine, the brilliant actor. What a great Alfred. What a great relationship between the two. I mean, that's one of the core relationships. In fact, I mean, the whole movie, it really is not just about exploring Bruce Wayne and Batman, but it does explore the relationships he has between people who are his allies, like Alfred, who's kind of this father figure friend to him, who kind of helps him along the way. There is, of course, Sergeant Gordon, who by the end of the film is Lieutenant Gordon, and by the next film he's Commissioner Gordon. Finally, it's an origin story. What can you say? And Lucius Fox, played by Morgan Freeman, who's quite brilliant as well. Helping out with the research and development and getting all these toys. So I mean, he's not on his own. He has his kind of base, and I think the way it explores these relationships is quite good, and it shows that there are these good people in Gotham who want the greater good, and there is even a kind of a complicated relationship between him and Ducard, the Liam Neeson character, who in his training with the League of Shadows, it's his kind of final decision in kind of making what stands out about him, that he doesn't want to kill. It separates him from the criminals. He won't do that. He still believes in justice. Ducard, or Ra's al Ghul, he does not share that sentiment. So there is a clash of ideals, but there is this mentor protege relationship, where he does kind of make the mistake, if you want to call it that, of not letting him die up there in the mountains when kind of the whole League of Shadows hideout kind of goes up in a big explosion and all that. And of course, he comes back later to tend to unfinished business with Gotham. And kind of the interesting thing about Ra's al Ghul and his whole plan against Gotham City is that it's not a personal thing. Like it's not this, you know, vengeance kind of plot. It's just that he feels Gotham is beyond saving at this point, and he feels that he's doing the right thing, and that him and the League of Shadows, they're the only ones with the guts to carry this out. And they're this ancient thing, this ancient organization who he explains kind of near the end when he's at Bruce Wayne's mansion before he burns it down, that the League of Shadows, they were the ones who set Rome on fire. They were the ones who loaded cargo ships with plague rats during the Black Death and all that kind of stuff, and new, better civilizations emerged because of them, and they want to do the same with Gotham. And this whole scheme about putting in the weaponized hallucinogen, the fear-inducing toxin, that was kind of their plan B. So what he also explains is that our methods are getting more advanced these days. We introduced economics into Gotham, and if it weren't for Bruce Wayne's parents, who used their wealth to try and make the city a better place, it probably would have worked. The city would have sorted itself out and destroyed itself in that way. So that they didn't really plan for. So they go ahead with this whole scheme. And I guess another thing they didn't plan for was Bruce Wayne dressing up as a bat and fighting against them, and this whole evil plot. And his angle, his perspective of Gotham is that it is very much worth saving, and it is a personal battle. So because it is more personal for Bruce Wayne and Batman, I mean, obviously we're kind of on his side. Though I mean, it's an interesting thing about the villain's plan, where you always got to say, if it sort of kind of makes sense, that's a good villain plan. So it's a good plot, good evil scheme. With all the Batman movies, they always kind of come up with good, unique kind of stuff, and this one's certainly no different. And it is this clash of ideals, this morality battle between Bruce Wayne and Ra's al Ghul. Ultimately, that's kind of what it boils down to. There's a lot of stops along the way, a lot of different and intriguing villains that we meet along the way as well, that all kind of play into this larger plot. And I think it is a really engaging plot. But of course, I mean, it's a Batman movie, and you kind of want to see the cool action in the movie, and it certainly delivers on that. I mean, all the kind of things you like about Batman, the cool fight scenes, the cool scenes with his vehicles, with his gadgets, that's all there. It's definitely skilled action filmmaking, in addition to a really engaging plot. And I suppose there's some criticisms about how the action is presented, is executed. More specifically, like with the hand-to-hand combat kind of stuff. Like there's a lot of quick cuts and flashy editing. You don't really get a good sense of Batman in the suit's kind of hand-to-hand fighting skills, I guess. I remember that being kind of a little nitpick that a lot of people had, and I kind of agree with that. But I think it works fine. I think the action scenes, the hand-to-hand kind of stuff, they play up pretty well. But a huge consolation to that is some of the other action scenes, like the Tumblr action scene, where he's escaped from Arkham, and Rachel, she's been gassed by the scarecrow, and she's hallucinating, and time's running out, and he's driving through the streets on the rooftops, and the cops are after him. It's an amazing action sequence, and that that Batmobile, the Tumbler, it's a really awesome vehicle. I think maybe not topped aesthetically from the Tim Burton one, which I that's kind of the coolest looking one I think. But in terms of like function and how it actually plays into the story and the action scenes that come out of it, I mean this one it really takes full advantage of his vehicle, which is so cool. I mean, this isn't some souped up car; it's a fucking tank, which is pretty cool. And the action scene at the end where he's in the city, everyone's hallucinating and going crazy, and he grapples to the train, and he's kind of like it's not like a very smooth Batman-y kind of action scene. He's like getting knocked around and stuff, and it's really cool to see him like struggling, and that's just it's just such a well done scene, and it really delivers on this world of Gotham that they create, and the action within it. And of course, there's definitely sort of like a Blade Runner kind of influence visually. The rainier the better in Gotham, I guess. So that's definitely an influence. But I mean, it works very well, and the cinematography by Wally Pfister is superb, and this would be the lone Academy Award nomination that the film received. It was nominated for Best Cinematography that year. Well deserved nomination. Great cinematography. Great music as well. This is Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard doing the score. They're definitely going for a different angle other than the infamous Batman March from Danny Elfman, which is of course terrific. This one isn't so much one that you can like hum in the shower or something like that, but it's a really exciting score, and you really do associate this music with this version of the character, and it really does kind of pump you up for Batman action, which is really cool. So I mean, all the technical aspects of the film are well done, and I mean the suit itself in this film, the bat suit. Again, it kind of plays into everything else where it seems like it could be like this functioning batsuit kind of thing where it's bulletproof armor that was discarded army project, and the cape with like memory currents in it that assist in his gliding, and all that kind of stuff. It's convincing. You buy it. It's just so well done, and everything in the movie it really does pay off, and really every kind of like seed that's planted, every kind of plot point, every kind of character, it does all serve this larger story, which all comes together, and it comes together in a very very satisfying way. And like it is, of course, it's about Batman and his whole journey, but definitely the supporting characters are integral in the film, and kind of go to show that there are people in Gotham who serve to do good, and they're trustworthy. They build trust with Batman, and all these supporting characters. They do get these nice hero moments, which I like. Like, of course, I mean, probably the strongest relationship in the film, I would say, is between Batman and Alfred, actually, and kind of the sort of father son friends kind of relationship that they have, and how Alfred helps him every step of the way, and by the end of it they're making their plans to rebuild and put in a proper bat cave, and all that kind of stuff. That's all great, and it's really really strong in building the relationship between Batman and Jim Gordon. Again, played so wonderfully by Gary Oldman. Like he himself, he's this chameleon of an actor, and he really makes this role stand out. And he's the one good cop that Batman trusts, and he has his hero moment with he like earlier in the film, he sees the tumbler and he's like, oh, I gotta get me one of those, and then he actually gets to drive it in the climax of the film, and he shoots down the tracks from the subway system, the train system, I should say, in Gotham in order to help Batman, and that's a great hero moment. And Rachel Dawes, Katie Holmes, she has a good moment. In kind of the midst of all the chaos occurring within Gotham City, she's saving the little kid, and Scarecrow's coming by. He's on the horse and all that, and she zaps him with the taser, and has a good heroic moment where she saves a kid. And Lucius Fox as well, and there's a whole kind of almost like whole other story going on with like how Wayne Enterprises is operating in his absence in all this time. And there's the character played by Rutger Hauer, who's kind of sort of scheming behind Bruce Wayne's back, and he's planning to sell off shares of the company. And he in one scene he fires Lucius Fox. He's like, "Didn't you get the memo?" And then by the very end of the film, it's Bruce Wayne who buys all the stocks, and Lucius Fox ends up getting his job, and then he's like, "Didn't you get the memo?" And it's a really great scene. That's like like a stand up and clap kind of scene. It's great. So I mean, all these characters have their payoffs and these great moments, and surrounding it all is this sincerely told story of this man becoming a superhero, becoming Batman, and it's done so with a careful consideration and a respect for the source material, a reverence for it, and also a respect for the audience, where it really earns our investment in the film. I think it doesn't take any shortcuts, and I think a lot of that is owed to Nolan's vision. And I wouldn't depreciate in any way Christian Bale's performance as Bruce Wayne, as Batman. Who he's terrific. I mean, Michael Keaton, he's always kind of going to be the sentimental favorite for me. He was the first Batman I saw when I was a kid. He was the Batman of my youth. He did a terrific job in the Tim Burton films, which were, of course, they're different films and different visions of the character. But I think maybe I tend to lean personally more toward Christian Bale as my personal favorite Batman. He devotes so much to the role, and he is so convincing, and in what's required of it being kind of this dual performance and being two different personalities, really. And that's it's the most intriguing thing about the character, where he does want to fight for the soul of the city, and he sees that fight in the Rachel Dawes character. And there is a sort of the love story going on between the two, but kind of by the end of it, she does ultimately discover his true identity, and all while he is trying to become Batman, he's kind of putting up this front as Bruce Wayne, as this careless, reckless, uninvolved billionaire playboy, right? And she's like, well, I can't be with you because of the mask. He's like, oh, I have to protect people. And she's like, no. The Bruce Wayne is the mask. The true version of yourself is Batman. And so, maybe the day will come when you don't need him. So I think that's a very intriguing take on the character. And Bale plays it so well. And again, it's just so convincing in the film's execution, and it wouldn't be possible without this great performance. It's a truly great performance. I mean, he does a great job in all three of the films, but maybe this one particularly, actually, because it does get to show kind of the full scope of his first venturing out into becoming The Dark Knight. And if it weren't for the second film, I guess this would be probably like the best Batman film. But I mean, they're both so good. Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. I mean, for me, it's like comparing The Godfather and The Godfather Part Two, or Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, or Alien and Aliens. They're just both so great. It's hard to pick a favorite, but this is a truly great film. One of the all-time best comic book to film adaptations, and it really is something of a miracle. It blew my mind back in 2005 when I first saw it. I wasn't prepared for how great it would be, and having watched it again recently, it remains great, and it's something very special. And I guess that's my review of Batman Begins. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. And until next time, I'll see you later.